Uh, Hold on. Ugh. I need my streaming PC. It's real now. It's real now. Well, hello everyone. This is another installment of the Angry Urbanist Complains series that I'm doing. Maybe something will come of it. If not, it gives me a space to vent, and that's just as good. Today, as you can see, the skyline of wonderful Chicago, Illinois. And this city, with all of its faults and all of its good things, I will be discussing today. Crazy thing is, I've been here. Not that much, but I've been here. And that gives me a little bit to talk on. Probably not as much as Fargo. Let's be real. I'm not as active in the urbanism of Chicago as I am Fargo. But that's okay, because there's still lots to talk about. So much so that I will definitely not be covering everything and every good bit of urbanism there is to see in Chicago today, or with probably any amount of videos I do, because it's a very large city. And it's a very beautiful city as well, in my opinion. There's a lot that could be done to improve this city. But right now, this is what we're reviewing, the current state. I've been here before, so I've talked in the past. My aunt, she actually lives in Berwyn, so way out here. I don't really know where her house is. It's one of these thousands and thousands of houses. But yeah, she's lived in that house for as long as I've known her. And I don't know, it's just I kind of like it. I don't know if I'd ever live in Chicago, but there is a lot of commuter rail, which I think is awesome. I think there should be more commuter rail pretty much anywhere. And from Berwyn to downtown. So I've hopped on a train with my aunt, family. We've gone, from Berwyn on this commuter line to downtown. And, it's a very easy, very leisurely ride to, the densest part of the city. And that's pretty cool. We should be building more commuter lines pretty much anywhere. But yeah, once we got down here, we got to this. You're gonna have to forgive me on a lot of the locations within Chicago. But I know we pulled into, where was it? I believe it was, if I can find it, this station right here. This station? Whatever station this is where we pulled up. Not the substation, no, not that kind of station. We pulled up here, get out, walk down these streets. We went to the, Sears Tower. You won't hear me calling it the Willis Tower, because I will be literally raked over coals if I said that. But, that's fair enough. I mean, it's been the Sears Tower for longer than it has been the now Willis Tower. But at the time I've been to Chicago, I haven't been to Chicago downtown anyway. Within the time of me becoming an urbanist, I think I've been to Berwyn since then. It's very walkable, of course. It's very dense, obviously, and really rivals a lot of skylines in the world, I personally believe. And for being a Midwest city with, the third most populous city in the country, it's quite impressive. It's quite impressive, actually, especially on the location and everything. There's a lot to discuss urbanism-wise, and it's hard to pick a starting point. So I'll probably just start with the coast here, because I think this is an important thing to discuss. So people love access to water. People like access to water. And back in the day, people, for some reason, decided to build, roads and interstates and freeways along our valuable coastlines. This is something you can see in Manhattan. This is something you can see in a lot of other cities that are bordering water. Chicago's no different here. Yeah, there's some green space. I couldn't tell you the history on this, like whether or not this green space was here prior to this or if it was extended after this. I can already see, and just from looking briefly, there's a lot of good bike infrastructure that I've seen on this coast, which is good. And down here as well. Oh, this is looks like it might just be a pedestrian path. I'm not sure. It might just be, but either way, there's a very nice two-way bike path here. So a lot of the space has been given back to people in the case of Chicago, and that's good to see. Up here, this is interesting. This is the access across the water here. Yeah, it actually, looking at this now, it looks like there's a lot of good bike infrastructure here in Chicago, and that's really good to see. That's very good to see. And this trail specifically looks very impressive. Thing is, it also borders right next to a, like, was this 8 or so lanes, 8, 9, 10 lanes here. The thing is, when you have this much space for cars and this much space for bikes, you are still inducing a huge demand for vehicles. And you can just see how much of the space here, lakeside, like, Lake Michigan, this coast is street, and I find that very unfortunate. I mean, at least the bike trail is on the lakeside, but in my opinion, there should not be this much vehicle infrastructure right next to a very beautiful lake that Chicago is built on. It's a bit disappointing, but here we are. I'm sure, give it 100 years, this will no longer be here. If times of now are any teller of that, this is just becoming more and more unpopular. Like, beachside infrastructure, especially for vehicles like this, people want their coastlines back. It's as simple as that. So anyway, I know that in Seattle that just what happened. They just got rid of like and not just, maybe within the past like 10, 20 years, but there's a double-decker like interstate that ran, or not interstate, but highway that ran right next to the water, and they tore that shit up after it had after it was unfixable, essentially. So, have all these cars, that's great. There's a beach here, that's good, and this has been given back to pedestrians. Beautiful concrete beach, that's beautiful. Beautiful. I'm sure some people love it. That's fine. We can take a gander here. What does it actually feel like to be here? Good paths? Not too bad. It's concrete, and, it could be a lot nicer. It could be a bit more of a green space, trees and everything else, but in this case, it's concrete. But at least there's a bike path, and at least it's on the water side. But again, all this space, coastline, is dedicated almost solely to vehicle throughput. It's just over here is a lot nicer, but still, it's a lot of space here dedicated to interchanges as well. I do see really good infrastructure for bikes. This is a very nice park here, Lincoln Park, and yeah, and you can see how valuable this coastal land is. I mean, people want to live up here. There's a very dense set of high-rises that run along the coast in Chicago. There'd be no reason to have some of your most valuable coastal land in the entire city, some of the most valuable coastal land in like the entire world, be dedicated to vehicles. Yeah, that's what I have to say. Another thing Chicago has has not going for it is the fact that, like, in early 2000s or somewhere around there, Chicago struck a deal with a bank because they were in a financial rut. And I can't remember what bank it is, but essentially, Chicago sold all of their streets and struck this 70-year deal with a massive bank conglomerate that now pretty much owns and operates all of the parking and parking enforcement in Chicago. So it has become very difficult for the city to do any work regarding street maintenance, street improvement, bike lanes. God forbid they remove parking spaces for bike lanes, because now it's at the point where all of the parking spaces that are removed that were once metered now have to be compensated back to the bank. Extremely disappointing. So what you see is it's hard to build transit, it's hard to build bus lanes, it's hard to build bike lanes, and oh wow, this is not where I put my guy. Definitely did not put it there. And while there are some good bike lanes, a lot of this is pretty rough, especially when you compare it to New York's bike infrastructure and how much that has been built out in the past decade or so. This is just Chicago, while yes, very walkable, is, I think, failing to take advantage of street narrowing, dedicated bus lanes, getting rid of parking. And I think a lot of that is due to the deal they struck and how difficult that has made it for them to deal with their own infrastructure. Now, there is a bus lane here, and I'm sure a lot of that comes down to, actually where to put bus lanes as well. But even still. Also, it looks like so many people, are parked in this or driving in these bus lanes. I see a lot of videos where people are driving in bus lanes, and it's kind of embarrassing. It really is. And even worse if these cars are parked. But yeah, no, Chicago's a pretty cool place, I think, overall. Let's see. What else is good? This park, I noticed, I think I've walked along this park at one point in my life. And from what I remember, it's quite good. I enjoyed it. But I do think that this park being, completely surrounded by... I mean, what is this? This is 10 lanes for downtown. And then here's another 8 lanes. And this is in the heart of the city's park. It's again, these types of streets promote very high vehicle speeds, and with congestion here, I assume there's quite a bit, considering the density of Chicago and everything. There probably is lower speeds because of how many cars there are, but to be dedicating this much space to privatized vehicles in a downtown urban center is really quite something. I mean, I look at environments like this, I see an opportunity to provide better transit access and reduce some of these lanes, bring back some of this green space, make it more of a park, more trees, all this stuff. I think especially in our downtowns in the US, I mean, sure, people love their stroads and their parking lots. Sure, there are some who love that, but where downtowns are and where they fall in the, spaces our cities take up, they should not be trying to compete with the ease of access of places like, big box stores, strip malls with a lot of vehicle access, a lot of parking. Downtowns are their own being, their own, organism almost. And to be catering to automobiles in this environment is only gonna cost you in the long run. I think. But other than that, Chicago's a very impressive city. It's very sizable. Obviously, if each of these buildings were to have its own parking garage, there would not be enough parking. Um, a lot of people in Chicago definitely don't own a vehicle because of that. I mean, there's not room here for vehicles, and no need either. You can easily manage all of your daily needs um, just by walking, cycling. This is a good bikeway. This I have not seen, but this looks very good. Only bus. It's interesting how many how many cars are in the bus only lane. I think people just don't care, which is kind of crazy. Bike lane. This is looking good. I think in the next here's a that very famous statue in Chicago. I think within the next like decade, within the next 1 or 2 decades, there's going to be big changes in the U.S. This is honestly just my opinion with how I feel. Things are debt in this country is at an all-time high and will be at an all-time high tomorrow and the next day. And I don't think building cities that are reliant on automobiles and so spread out is going to get us out of that debt or help in any way. And I think only contributes to the amount of debt. This is really good right here. These are called bump outs. They have another name too, but essentially they're very nice. They don't allow cars to park on these corners. They narrow the street for pedestrians at crossings. So the actual distance crossing the street, is 5 or 6 feet less in this case. These bollards clearly show that, hey, don't park your vehicle here. Don't be a JWAD. Bollards here, great. This is some of the same things that could be... These bollards are super great, by the way. It creates not a physical barrier to where, like, a car could not enter that lane if it wanted to, which is a bit problematic. However, it does very much tell vehicles to not enter this lane. And if a vehicle were to veer off course into the bike lane, as uncommon as that is, it's definitely a possibility. But as far as people parking here in this green bike lane, it's you're definitely going to have to go out of your way to be a douche to actually park in this lane. Sorry, but it's the only truth. And another thing, the entire lane is marked green. This is a very good way to signify to people that this is a bike lane specifically. It's also kind of, I think it's a good color for bike lanes. It's a very common color everywhere in the US. And we can see just like what these bike lanes looked like before. This is a dated picture. And it's always nice to see when a city quickly improves its existing infrastructure with just a few curbs, a few bollards, and a bit of paint. And you can really improve the safety of this for cyclists, for pedestrians, for vehicles, and everyone else involved. Great urbanism here, Chicago. Great. This is freaking great. Bus lanes, great. I can't believe people just park in the bus lanes like in Chicago. There almost needs to be there needs to be a lot more probably enforcement on this as well. It's definitely a cultural shift. Like, I'm sure people in Chicago are just happy parking anywhere, which is why it's great that there are bollards on these bike paths. People in vehicles have been given access, primary access to roads for the past, like, I don't know, 70 years in this country. So to have that being stripped away almost feels like a violation of rights for a lot of people. And instead of being understanding, they will often just park in the bus lanes or bike lanes anyway. And this is something you see all the time. And it's unfortunate because there are so many bicyclists that use these bike lanes and are ridiculed by drivers, but if a driver does the same thing, what is a cyclist to do, right? A cyclist is underpowered in all these situations, and really, if a vehicle parks in a bike lane, the biker has to go around. If a biker parks in or rides in a vehicle lane, people are going to get pissed, and they're going to take their aggressions out on the biker, because people in vehicles, you see it all the time, tend to have a misconstrued view of the world due to the fact that they're isolated in a vehicle driving around the city and not actually experiencing the situation they're in. By the way, my beautiful girlfriend, who I think is watching, suggested I get these A&W. Well, she didn't maybe not suggest, but she did say they were on sale, and I'm glad she said that. So thank you, Amelia, if you're watching. It's not as good as Mug, but it was very cheap, and it's still good, and I love root beer. I need to ride on the subways in Chicago, because I know there are subways. I don't know, but I've not actually ridden on them. Some of the things in Chicago, like, they will, and this is every U.S. city, U.S. cities find it very difficult and challenging to build transit, especially in the wake of this administration. Transit is significantly underfunded. Significantly underfunded in this country. And that's unfortunately the reality. When you build everything for vehicles, there's a lot more money your residents are spending on transportation. It's less money that gets to go into back into your city. But if you build transit, you fund the transit for people within your city, you can move people around a lot more efficiently. You can build a prosperous city, and not have to rely so much on automakers and external, companies that basically control your streets by solely making them for automobiles and all this stuff. And the Bean, of course. Been here, great. It's a great sculptor, a great sculpture, This is very nice as well. Nice green spaces. I do really appreciate that. And Chicago has done a good job in this environment to build a lot of... This is very nice pedestrian infrastructure right here. This is how pedestrian infrastructure should be built. It should be praised. It should be, shown off, really. And useful as well. Although it is kind of a long walk. Like, if you actually wanted to cross here, I get you're not going to a park to be like, yeah, I really efficiently want to cross this. And it's a very nice bridge, and I have nothing bad to say about this. But if someone really wanted to cross straight here, sorry, bub, you got to take the scenic route. And maybe that's not so bad. Just a lot of cool art around here. Climbing walls. Very nice. And good that it's in the heart of a very dense urban center. This underpass, this is, I don't know, this is just a lot of road for vehicles downtown. It's very easy to drive in downtown Chicago, I'm sure. And in years to come, I suspect a lot of this will be just done away with in favor of more urbanism. Urbanism is becoming more and more popular in this country, and that's not just coming from me, a very biased source who thinks that my way is the only way forward. Fundamentally, it's not me who thinks that. It's not solely me who thinks that. It's everyone who came before the automobile who thought that, and built cities where transit was readily available and cities were dense, because that's how people lived. And the American dream results in sprawl, unsustainable sprawl, that oftentimes kills us, creates a dangerous environment for people walking, biking. Same old, really. Same old. And just requires so much more infrastructure to maintain. I mean, even downtown with all of its, like, downtown Chicago with all of its quirks and stuff here, all of this infrastructure supports, like, a few thousand people, all of these streets, roads, and the same amount of infrastructure in a more dense part of the city, supports 10 times that amount of population. And maybe I'm being a bit, my numbers are probably not that accurate, but definitely more density here. And the crazy thing is, a lot of these places, especially these are really nice. You have, pseudo green spaces on the roof. You have access to patios. These people got a pool on the roof. There's almost like little backyards. Not everything in this country has to be built the same, and I think a lot of people forget that we can build a variety of housing. We can build a variety of spaces that accommodate people at different points in their lives, or at different levels of desire for different things. Not everyone wants to live, sure, in a house like this, but not everyone else wants to live in a house like this, way out, kind of removed from the city. Yet almost exclusively in U.S. cities, this is solely what we build. We have these huge houses. In this case, there are not even any sidewalks like on this street. If you had an accessibility issue, this would be very hard to, get around this environment. If you want to run transit to areas like this, there's another issue. The density of these environments do not support transit very well. It's very hard to run transit lines into environments like this. And, well, if you look at downtown, it's very easy to run transit in an environment like this, where a lot of people are, and where building one transit line can be used by many people. Another thing about transit, you want frequency over coverage to a point. If you're going to have one line, make it connect a lot of, dense parts of your cities, destinations within your cities, and you want at least 10-minute frequency on that. If you have anything more, you're only catering your transit to people who are need transit to get around their city, and you're not pandering to choice riders who, if given the choice, are not going to take a transit method that's going to take 30-45 minutes out of their day to use, as opposed to another means like their vehicle. If they can quickly hop on a bus or a tram or light rail, and the frequency of that is every 10 minutes or less, it's much more likely for people to make a choice to take transit over their vehicle, rather than it being anything more than 10 minutes. And that's something you see all the time. There's a bus that runs between NDSU and downtown here in Fargo, and it's a 10-minute route, oftentimes even less. To get between downtown and your last class, and you have a 10-minute route, it's very convenient to not even have to think about if the bus is showing up or not, and when the bus is showing up. It's a very popularized argument in the U.S. where people don't like to be on schedules. They like to move around their city whenever they want. Do you think people in very dense urban centers who take transit all the time and take very reliable and frequent transit, do you think they feel like they can't move around their city because they can't leave whenever they want? I venture to guess no. That's something we see all over, is that transit is underbuilt, underfunded, and I'm sure that's no different in Chicago. Which is great that they're building bike lanes, because it gives people just another means of getting around the city. These are great ballers, by the way. Make America... Does that say jizz? Oh, God. These bollards are pretty good. a lot of times we put bollards like this in front of like electrical boxes, things we don't want to get damaged, but we don't apply that same philosophy to people who are much more vulnerable to vehicle collisions. It's unfortunate. Not everything should need a bollard like this, but these bollards really definitely help reduce, I'm sure, how many pedestrians get hit on this corner. And that is good. It's good stuff. I'm probably going to do a short stream today. So 30 minutes, probably pretty good. But if there are any suggestions of things you'd like me to talk about, specifically within Chicago, I think it is a very beautiful city, and there's a lot to talk about here, both architecturally, of which, the architecture in Chicago is very pretty. I do very much like these buildings where they're like warbled almost, and there's 3 of them. I also am like a huge fan of this building. I don't know the names of these buildings, but I like remember their appearance, and this is one of my favorites in Chicago. There's also a very interesting one right here. This one. So there's a subway line, I believe, under this building, which is why the entire building is supported by this center column. So this massive like skyscraper is only supported by like this. And it's also kind of nice because it leaves a lot of space for pedestrian malls and all, as well as a subway at the bottom. Is it the most cost-effective way of building a structure? Probably not, but in this case it worked out. And also the Chicago River, there's been a lot of increase in like access to it within past decades, and what they're doing is really good. And I think in the next 70 years, whenever Chicago owns their streets again, if something hasn't changed by then, I'm sure once they get their streets back, things will change very quickly. So that's been it. Maybe I'll review Chicago next time. Maybe I'll visit another city. There's so much to talk about with like huge cities like this that it's really just a general overview of like some of the great things, some of the things that could be fixed, and it's impossible to cover it all. There's great commuter rail. I know the L is great in Chicago for transit as well. It's critically underfunded, of course, but it does work, and it's an elevated train, and that's great. Essentially, if you take anything away from this, more transit, more space back to people, and more walkable cities. Go figure, that's pretty much what this entire series is on. But yeah, thanks for watching. Got the John Hancock building here. This is also very Star Wars-esque building. Very kind of cool. New York. I don't know when I'm going to get to New York. I know a bit more about New York than I do Chicago, to be honest. But still, not very much as compared to Fargo. Anyway, I'm going to end the stream here. So thank you to everyone who tuned in. And Amelia, if you're watching, I love you.